We've obviously seen the very visible and visceral reaction from markets to US policies, but it's very interesting to see from the consumer side what impact it's having. And these little acts of activism from consumers who have decided to turn their back on certain US products. Now, this is something that we saw started in Canada, but it's also translated across to Europe. One country in particular being Denmark, and this particularly due to the moves by President Trump to make claims over Greenland, which is, of course, a semi-autonomous Danish island. And we've seen consumers turning their back now against certain products. So this has been aided in part by companies and supermarkets that have added particular labelling to their products that indicate that they're European made, and that allows consumers to make those choices. And many I spoke to on the ground have said, yes, that's absolutely informing their decisions, and they may be choosing it because it's a little bit of a FU to the president, for instance. And shop workers saying that this is an act of activism from the consumers. And we've seen it also in France with consumers indicating that they will be boycotting products. Also in Spain, campaigns suggesting that consumers should buy more locally. And we've seen it with some particular brands, so Tesla, McDonald's, these being front of mind, some of these really big household US names that they've just been rejected by some consumers in Europe.
It's fascinating, the fighting with their feet for the Danes, because the reality is the biggest goods trade are all items that the consumers can do very little about. I was looking from the American side into Denmark. It is crude, it's planes, it's refined petroleum, so good luck doing without any of that for the Danes. But conversely, the other way around, packaged medicine, vaccines, orthopedic appliances, good luck doing without that for the Americans if they were to boycott some of the Danish produce.
Exactly. Some of these Danish exports are huge for the US market. We know the absolute success and popularity of the weight loss drugs from Novo Nordisk, this huge name out of Denmark. So it's not quite a balanced trade, you know. It's easier for perhaps Danish consumers to reject it. And as Sylvia mentioned, we've also seen this translate to some extent in travel as well. It's these little indications of consumers just turning away from it. Again, we've seen that with a lot of Canadian carriers saying that no longer do those travellers want to travel to the US. They might be looking at other parts of North America. And there's sort of early indications from Europe that that might be the case too. Accor saying that bookings from Europe to the US are down 25% over the summer period, but data not quite fleshing that out fully yet.
I was looking at the pictures. I'm assuming you also took these pictures when you were in Denmark, and we were showing them on the screen as well. I'm also interested in understanding whether there's also an option to go elsewhere. You know, we're discussing how consumers in Europe are perhaps avoiding American products, but are they definitely choosing European products, or are they choosing products from anywhere else but not the US?
It's a good question. I think there is an element of pride. One of the shoppers told me over Danish products or European-made products. There is this understanding that potentially the standards are sometimes higher in Europe, and that does inform a lot of shoppers' decisions. But again, there are those who will say that ultimately it is going to come back down to the price as well. And, you know, it's easy to make these short-term protests perhaps, but how long does that last, and what are the sort of economic implications of these trade sort of spats, and whether that will impact the consumer patterns longer term?